Sometimes the hardest part of moving on isn't letting go of the person, it's letting go of the hope that one day they'll come back, that maybe they'll change, that maybe the story isn't over. But here's the truth. Giving someone a second chance after they've already shown you who they are is like reopening a wound and expecting it not to bleed. If you want freedom, peace, and your power back, you don't just distance yourself, you erase him from your heart. And today, I'll show you how to do that, with no second chances. Stop making him the main character. This is where it begins. When someone leaves your life, when they've hurt you or shown you that they don't value you, the mistake we often make is not that we hold on physically, but that we hold on mentally. We keep them alive in our thoughts, in our conversations, in the quiet moments when no one else is around. We let them become the star of the movie that plays on repeat in our heads. Every time you replay what he said, every time you analyze his behavior, every time you look for signs of what could have been, you are giving him the lead role in a story that no longer deserves his presence. Think about it. How many times in a day do you catch yourself drifting back to him? Maybe it's in the middle of work when you're distracted by a memory. Maybe it's scrolling through social media, comparing what he's doing to how you're feeling. Maybe it's when a song plays and suddenly you're right back in that moment with him. Each of those moments seems harmless, but together they form a pattern, and that pattern tells your brain that he still matters more than he actually does. The more space he takes up in your thoughts, the less room you leave for yourself, for your growth, for new experiences that could bring you real joy. The truth is, the reason it's so hard to stop thinking about him isn't because he was extraordinary. It's because your brain is addicted to the emotional high he once gave you. Like a movie you've seen too many times, you keep rewatching the good parts, while conveniently skipping over the scenes that made you feel unseen, unimportant, or unloved. You're not addicted to him. You're addicted to the version of him that you created in your head, the one that seemed perfect for a moment. But movies end, and if you keep letting his character run on loop, you stop writing new chapters in your own life. Imagine for a second that your life really is a movie. There's a soundtrack, a plot, characters who come and go. If this were on screen and someone was watching your story unfold, how would it look? Would it inspire them to root for you? Or would they be frustrated watching you keep circling back to a character who clearly doesn't deserve to be in the scene anymore? Sometimes it helps to step outside of yourself and see your situation as though you were an outsider. When you do, it becomes clearer that holding onto him in your thoughts isn't romantic, it's self-sabotage. The shift begins when you choose to take him out of the spotlight. You stop asking, "What is he thinking?" and instead ask, "What am I creating?" You stop giving energy to the story of us and start pouring energy into the story of me. The main character doesn't chase the person who left the stage. They rise from it. They take the lesson, they take the strength, and they carry the plot forward. That's what makes someone magnetic, powerful, unforgettable. It's not about erasing every memory or pretending the past never happened. It's about refusing to keep casting someone in a role they've already failed. It's about saying, "This is my life, my movie, my heart, and I get to decide who gets screen time." Because the moment you stop making him the main character, you begin to step back into your own spotlight. And that is where the real story begins. Pain is proof you cared, not that he deserved you. So many people confuse the intensity of the pain after a breakup with the value of the person they lost. They think if it hurts this much, it must mean he was really special. It must mean I lost something irreplaceable. But that isn't true. The depth of your pain doesn't measure his worth. It measures yours. It measures your ability to feel deeply, to give, to invest, to love with an open heart. The hurt you feel is a reflection of the size of your emotional capacity, not a reflection of the quality of the man who didn't know how to treasure it. Think of it like this. If you hand someone a priceless piece of art, and they drop it, you're devastated because of how precious it was. But the fact that they dropped it doesn't suddenly make the art worthless. It just shows that they weren't capable of holding something that valuable. In the same way, when you offered love, care, loyalty, and depth, you were offering something rare. If he couldn't handle it, that's not your fault, and it certainly doesn't diminish what you gave. The mistake is assuming that because he didn't value it, it must not have been worth much. The truth is, his inability to handle what you offered says far more about his limitations than it does about your worth. Pain can trick us into romanticizing what we lost. We sit in the ache of missing him, and our brain tries to justify the pain by telling us he must have been extraordinary. We remember the highlights, the affection, the laughs, and we weave them into a story of someone who mattered more than he really did. But pain doesn't always mean we lost someone great. Sometimes it simply means we gave someone more than they ever earned. We don't hurt because they were exceptional. We hurt because we are exceptional in the way we care, and because we poured that into someone who didn't know how to hold it. What if instead of asking, "Why wasn't I enough?" you asked, "Why did I give so much of myself to someone who gave me so little back?" That shift reframes the pain. It's not a sign of your failure, it's a sign of your capacity, and capacity is a gift. Not everyone can feel as deeply as you do. Not everyone can love with the kind of intensity you brought. When someone fails to honor that, the answer isn't to shrink or to regret. The answer is to recognize that your depth belongs with someone who has the strength and the maturity to appreciate it fully. The worst thing you can do is take your pain as evidence that you should fight for him, give him another chance, or wait for him to see your value. That would be like handing the same person the priceless piece of art they dropped and expecting them to suddenly hold it carefully this time. People rarely change without real growth, and until that happens, you're only repeating the same mistake. The pain isn't a reason to chase, it's a reason to choose better next time. So let the hurt remind you not of his importance, but of your heart's capacity. Let it remind you that you have an extraordinary ability to feel, to give, to connect. And instead of wasting that ability on someone who treated it carelessly, preserve it for someone who has the strength, the gratitude, and the depth to hold it with both hands. Because the fact that you're hurting doesn't mean he deserved you. It means you are capable of a love so valuable that he never should have had the chance to waste it. Memories don't equal reality. This is one of the most deceptive traps we fall into after someone has left our lives. We don't miss the whole of them, we miss the edited version that lives in our head. Our mind replays the best moments, the highlights, the laughter, the closeness, the times when things felt effortless. And because those moments were real, it's easy to confuse them with the whole picture. But what we fail to remember is that those were only fragments. They were snapshots of what we wanted things to be, not the full truth of what they actually were. When you think back to the relationship, you may find yourself clinging to the way he made you feel on your best days. Maybe it was the way he looked at you when he was fully present, or the way he spoke to you when he was trying, or the excitement of the beginning when everything felt new and full of possibility. Those moments light up your memory like fireworks, but fireworks are temporary. What we forget is the quiet stretches in between, the neglect, the inconsistency, the doubt, the way he pulled away when you needed closeness. Those things were just as real, but they don't play on repeat in your mind because they don't feed the fantasy. The danger of confusing memories with reality is that it keeps you tethered to an illusion. You start missing a man who never truly existed in the way you imagine. Yes, the moments of sweetness happened, but they were mixed with disappointment. Yes, the laughter was real, but so were the tears. If you put those moments side by side, the full picture wouldn't match the highlight reel you're playing in your head. And if you're honest with yourself, that highlight reel is the version of him you hoped he could be, not the version he consistently was. Memory has a way of romanticizing the past, especially when the present feels lonely. In the quiet moments, your brain will take you back to the warmth of being held or the sound of his voice, and it will whisper, "See, that was special. Maybe you should have held on." But if it were truly special in the way you deserve, you wouldn't be sitting here with an ache in your chest and a hole where consistency should have been. If it were truly love in the way you need, you wouldn't be longing for scraps. You would have been living in the security of something whole. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is to see memory for what it really is. Not truth, but a selective story your brain tells to keep you attached. Once you realize that, you can stop chasing the ghost of what you thought you had. You can look at the relationship with clearer eyes and ask, if I remove the fantasy, what was the reality? Did he show up for me consistently? Did he make me feel safe, cherished, and seen? Did he grow with me instead of away from me? If the answer is no, then what you're holding onto isn't love, it's longing for potential, and potential is not enough to build a life on. When you stop treating memories as reality, you free yourself from the cycle of missing what never fully existed. You stop feeding the illusion that he was your perfect match, and in that freedom, you make space for something real, something consistent, something that doesn't need editing to look beautiful. Because the truth is, love that lasts doesn't live only in memories. It shows up in reality, day after day. And that is what you deserve. No second chance means protecting your standards. When someone betrays your trust, disrespects your love, or shows you that they cannot value you the way you deserve, the easiest thing to do is to waver. You start thinking, maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe if I give him another chance, things will be different. That's the dangerous voice of hope mixed with fear, the hope that he'll change, and the fear that you'll never find someone else who makes you feel the way you once did. But every time you give in and reopen the door to someone who has already proven they can't treat you right, you send a message to yourself that your boundaries don't matter. The truth is, standards aren't just about how other people treat you. They're about how you treat yourself. When you say, I won't tolerate disrespect, I won't tolerate inconsistency, I won't tolerate someone who disappears and comes back only when it suits them, you're setting a standard that tells the world, and more importantly tells yourself, that you value your heart too much to gamble with it. But if you lower those standards when someone knocks again, you erode your own self-respect. You teach yourself that your values are negotiable. And the moment your values become negotiable, you lose your sense of power. It's not about being cold or unforgiving. It's about being consistent. Imagine a parent who sets a rule for their child, say bedtime is at 9 p.m., but every time the child pushes, cries, or begs, the parent gives in. What happens? The child stops taking the rule seriously. The standard is no longer a standard. It's just a suggestion. That's exactly what happens in relationships when you let someone back in after they've crossed your boundaries. You may think you're giving them another chance, but what you're really doing is showing them that your standards can be bent. And once someone knows your standards are flexible, they stop respecting them. Consistency builds self-respect. Every time you say no to someone who has mistreated you, you're saying yes to your worth. Every time you refuse to hand out a second chance to someone who wasted the first, you strengthen the muscle of self-love. It's not about punishing him. It's not about revenge. It's about aligning your actions with the belief that you are worthy of respect, loyalty, and real love. Because if you don't enforce your standards, who will? Giving second chances in love often comes from a generous heart. You want to believe in people. You want to believe they can change. You want to believe that the connection you had is worth saving. And sometimes people do change, but real change requires effort, humility, and consistent action. If someone isn't showing you that level of transformation, then taking them back isn't a sign of love, it's a sign of fear. It's the fear of letting go completely, the fear of facing the unknown, the fear that maybe this is as good as it gets. But the unknown is never as dangerous as staying stuck in a cycle that keeps wounding you. Protecting your standards means protecting your future. When you draw a line and keep it, you clear space for someone who doesn't need a second chance to get it right. You make room for a person who sees your value the first time and rises to meet it. That's the kind of love you're worthy of. Not the kind that needs endless forgiveness, but the kind that honors you without asking you to compromise who you are. So when you say no second chance, you're not being harsh, you're being faithful to yourself, and that is the greatest act of love you can show. Replace him with the life he blocked. When someone leaves, it can feel like a hole has been carved out of your world. The time you used to spend with him, the conversations you used to have, the energy you poured into the relationship, it all feels like empty space. That's when most people make the mistake of filling that space with longing, with constant thoughts about what they've lost. They replay old memories, they check in on him through social media, they talk about him endlessly with friends. But that only keeps the hole wide open. The truth is, the fastest way to erase someone from your heart is not just to remove them, it's to consciously replace them with a new life, one so full that he no longer has room to haunt it. Think about the energy you invested in him, all the texts you sent, the plans you made, the worries you carried when he was distant, the compromises you made to keep the peace. That energy didn't disappear when he left. It's still inside you, waiting to be redirected. The question is, where will you put it now? You can pour it into mourning, or you can pour it into building a life he never would have fit into. That's where your power lies. Instead of focusing on the door that closed, ask yourself, what did I miss out on while I was with him? What parts of me got put on pause? What experiences did I delay? Those are the places you begin to fill. Maybe it's reconnecting with friends you neglected while he had your attention. Maybe it's chasing goals you pushed aside because the relationship demanded so much of you. Maybe it's trying things he never encouraged you to try, traveling, learning a skill, saying yes to opportunities you once would have avoided. Every time you fill the space with something new, you chip away at the hold he has on you. You're not just distracting yourself, you're actively rewriting your story. And the more you write, the less room there is for the old chapter to replay. Replacing him doesn't mean jumping into another relationship right away. In fact, rushing into someone new can sometimes just be another way of keeping the focus external, when what you really need is to focus inward. Replacing him means filling your world with things that make you stronger, happier, and more alive. It's about expanding so much that the version of you who once accepted his bare minimum no longer exists. When you do that, you don't just heal, you evolve. Here's the irony: the person you become when you stop obsessing over him is the person he probably wouldn't recognize. And that's the point, because you're not building a life that would tempt him to come back. You're building a life that makes his absence irrelevant. He was a chapter, the book continues, and each new page you write, each new memory you create, becomes evidence that your life was never dependent on him in the first place. Every no you give him now is a yes to something greater. No to responding to his late night messages is yes to a full night's sleep and peace of mind. No to stalking his updates is yes to creating your own. No to wondering what he's doing is yes to asking yourself what you want next. Those yeses add up. Over time, they build a life so rich, so full, so aligned with who you really are, that you look back and realize he didn't leave a hole. He left a space that allowed you to grow into more than you ever imagined. Replacing him with the life he blocked isn't just a healing strategy. it's your transformation. And the day you wake up and realize you're too busy living to even think of him, that's the day you'll know you didn't just move on. You built a life so expansive, he simply doesn't fit in it anymore. Closure is a choice, not a gift. So many people spend months, even years, waiting for that perfect conversation that will finally explain everything. They tell themselves, if only he would tell me why he left, if only he would apologize, if only he would admit he was wrong, then I could finally move on. That waiting keeps you chained to him. It keeps you stuck in a loop where your healing is dependent on someone else's actions. Someone who has already shown you they can't or won't give you what you need. The hard truth is that closure doesn't come from him. It comes from you deciding that you don't need his permission to move forward. When you wait for closure from another person, you hand them all the power. You make your peace of mind dependent on whether he chooses to explain himself or acknowledge the hurt he caused. But why should your healing depend on the very person who broke you? That's like expecting the person who pushed you into the water to be the one who pulls you out. You don't need him to save you. You need to stop standing in the water and start swimming to the shore yourself. Closure is simply the decision to stop asking questions that have no satisfying answers. Why did he do it? Why wasn't I enough? Why did he change? You could spend a lifetime searching for those answers and still never feel satisfied. Even if he gave you an explanation, it wouldn't undo the hurt. It wouldn't erase the betrayal. And most importantly, it wouldn't guarantee that you wouldn't go back to wondering again tomorrow. That's the illusion of closure. It pretends that if he just said the right thing, your pain would vanish. But real closure is not about his words. It's about your choice to stop letting the questions run your life. Closure is when you say, I don't need to know why. I don't need to understand every detail. I don't need his apology. I decide that this chapter is over. It's a decision you make once, and then you keep making it every time the old thoughts creep in. It's the moment you choose to create the ending yourself, instead of waiting for him to hand it to you. You don't wait for him to say it's finished. You decide it's finished, and you start writing the sequel. It's empowering because it puts you back in control. Imagine holding a pen and staring at a story someone else walked out of halfway through. You could wait for them to come back and finish writing it, but what if they never do? Are you going to let your book remain half-written forever? Or are you going to pick up the pen and continue without them? That's what closure really is. Picking up the pen and refusing to let someone else's absence freeze your story. The moment you stop waiting for him to give you closure, you free yourself. You stop checking your phone for messages. Stop looking for hints in his actions. Stop needing that one last conversation. You realize you've already had all the conversations you needed, the ones that showed you who he really is. And that is enough. You don't need a bow tied around the ending. The ending is clear. He didn't show up for you in the way you needed. That's your closure. When you understand this, the power shifts. You're no longer the one waiting by the door, hoping he knocks. You're the one closing it, turning the lock, and opening another door somewhere else. Closure isn't about what he says, it's about what you choose. And the choice to end it, to stop revisiting it, to refuse to give it more of your life, that's the moment you truly move on. You don't erase someone from your heart by pretending they never existed. You erase them by deciding they no longer deserve space in your present or your future. The pain you feel isn't proof of their value. It's proof of your capacity to love deeply. The memories you replay aren't reality. They're fragments of a story that already showed you its ending. And every time you choose no second chance, you protect your standards, you reclaim your power, and you open the door to the life he was holding you back from. Closure isn't something you wait for. It's something you create. And when you create it, you step into a freedom that's bigger than the relationship you lost. So today, make this your moment. Draw the line, close the chapter, and step into a story where you are no longer defined by who you let go, but by the strength it took to let him go for good.